And now it is preparing our live Facebook stream while I look comfortable in the Bien Mosquito Vineyard. I like the background because when I walk away, it looks like I just...
Is that block Q? Where is it?
There. It sounds about right. Sounds about right. Okay. That should be rolling. And let me just make sure we're live. Let's see. That would be here. All right. There we go. It's a brave new world. There's that. There's that. Okay, live. I just saw live. Yes, we're on. We're on. That is. Now I have to. I'll be looking at this later on, wondering why I was live on Facebook for 2 minutes, having just a kind of open-mouthed, like hoping flies wouldn't fly in. But welcome everybody. We are live. Welcome to Day Drinking with Wes Hagen. It is the 17th of July in the gorgeous and horrible year 2020, and I am as excited as I can be to welcome Jim Clendenen from Climat and Clendenen Family Vineyards. And we're very, very excited to have you, Jim. We decided to come on just a little bit early because we were tasting a little bit of this delicious 2015 Chardonnay. And you were mentioning that this spends 2 years in 100% new Francois Ferrer.
Absolutely.
Brand new.
Good to see you, Wes. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me on. I understand you've done about 500 of these already, and you finally got to me. I appreciate that very much.
I wanted to make sure I got my yips out before I brought in the PGA Pro. So my question about brand new oak in this wine is a question I ask a lot of people, especially about stem inclusion. What was the fundamental deficit of this wine that required 100% new French oak for it to be perfect for you as a craftsperson?
You know, nothing at all. There's no deficit in the wine. There's a deficit in the wine style. After working in Burgundy in 1981 and visiting there before, and then visiting there 45 times afterwards, I realized that you've got these guys that are farming as great as they can possibly farm in a village, Merceau. They're farming in Chassagne-Montrachet in a Premier Cru as good as they possibly can. And yet when they get their best grades, they gloriously add an enhancement, a lagniappe, a benefit by using 100% new oak. And that is to complete a wine style that is very rare in the world, very difficult to do, and something that I discovered that we could do in California in 1983, working with Walt and Mona, parents of Brian Babcock, and taking their first harvest and putting it in 100% new oak for 18 months. And I didn't know anybody at that point in California who was going more than 1 year, least of all more than 1 year, at 100% new oak. And the wine was just an absolute unbelievable thrill to me. And then
was that Santa Rita your first experience working with Santa Rita Hills fruit?
That was the first experience you could possibly have with Santa Maria Hills fruit, except for Sanford and Benedict. And I was working with Sanford and Benedict at the same time, but I got no surprises from Sanford and Benedict, except I've had 35 years of pleasure working with that vineyard, and I love the wines that I make. But if you want to have a surprise, take 3-year-old fruit, pick it during the rain in '83, in the first El Nino year, and have your ultimate bricks read at 21.5 and make a wine that every serious critic, people that I cared about, tasted and said it reminded them of Grand Cru White Burgundy. We're talking Michael Lynch from Pacific Wine Company. We're talking about all the serious folks that sold the wine. It was amazing.
I remember I thought Dan Berger tasted that wine and went a little bit ape over it as well.
Dan was really on our side at that time, even though he hated the style of wine that I made. He wanted things to be 14.5 alcohol and lush. And when he tasted things that were dense, complex, it took him a very long time to come around and understand it. And one day he finally said, I don't particularly like the style of wine that Jim's making up in Santa Barbara County, but if you want to meet someone who knows how to make the style of wine they want to make from Santa Barbara County, it's Jim.
Yeah, no, I thought those wines were, I've not tasted that wine, but I know Interestingly, I think one question I was going to ask you, and we're almost on top of 5, but as people come in, that's fantastic. Third year vineyard, first leaf. If you get good growth, the first year you get some fruit up on the wire. The second year, third year, you might, if you want to, produce a little bit of crop. If you think you have what's happening under the ground the same above the ground as far as vigor. I've found in 3 or 4 vineyards that I've used as a consultant and as a winemaker at Clopeppi that the first vintage is by far the best vintage in the first decade. That there's something about that first crop. Any comment on that?
Oh no, that's absolutely de rigueur for Burgundy. You know, they're the ones that taught me about that. That when you get your fruit from the third leaf, or if you wait for a year and get the fruit from the fourth leaf, that'll be the best fruit you'll get for the next 7 years. So you got 10 leaves, which I think is exactly what you're thinking about, and everything is not as good unless it's a miracle. And that stuff that comes out in the third leaf, red or white, is shockingly intense, shockingly concentrated. And the vines are waiting to liberate something, and then I think we as stewards for the next few years liberate too much. Yeah. Worked out really well with 2.5 tons on the third leaf. So we'll see if we can get 3.5 tons to next year. And all of a sudden we're taking away a little bit of the intensity, the life, the vigor, the natural crunchiness that we had in Santa Barbara.
I always thought from a dirt perspective, the first crop, the crop requires certain elements, certain, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, micronutrients, calcium, that whatever's, because of our reliance on drip irrigation, we sort of turn our vines into crack addicts that just stay right next to the crack house, which is the drip emitter. And as the drip emitter drips, they're like, yes, 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 water, water, water. And in those what I'm calling the little grapevine crack house, there's plenty of nutrients to begin with, but they're depleted incredibly quickly because our roots aren't forced to go deeper and deeper to look for water and nutrients. So that was always kind of my idea of why. But it's good to know that something I sort of thought about independently is proven that they've known it in Burgundy for 1,000 years.
It's actually a rule there. And, the interesting thing in Burgundy is what they're planting on is ground that has already been depleted by planting something else there. And when they were really over fertilizing and messing things up in the 50s and the 60s, they depleted so much that it was hard to get the young vines to be perky in the 70s and the 80s. It took them a long time to get back to where they should be. In our neighborhood, when we planted at the Babcock planting at my Le Bon Climat that we have here in front of us, the only thing that was happening there before was the migration in a casual ambulatory way of bovines who were eating the grass and shitting all over where the grapes are going to grow. So the soil was supercharged.
Yeah, no, definitely. I remember there being maybe 15 or 20 years in Burgundy where they thought they had gone too far and they probably weren't seeing the same type of thing. And we'll talk about Burgundy because I think, for me, the greatest compliment you can give to Burgundy is to leave Burgundy in Burgundy and say, what I learned about what I love about wine is Burgundy. And what I make here in California is pure Santa Maria Valley, pure Santa Rita Hills. But the same way that as if I was playing guitar in a rock band, every note that's coming out is going to be influenced by every other note that I've heard from Carlos Santana, Jerry Garcia, you name it. How do you see using the word Burgundian and describing a word that is not from Burgundy, France?
Well, only talking about style, sort of technique, sort of structure. I think that when you violate the essential structure of the world's greatest Chardonnays, world's greatest Pinot Noirs, by doing something that's simple in a hot climate, in a new world environment, then if you use the word Burgundian, you're a lion sack of shit. Yeah. I truly think that if we're trying to talk about something that has a moderate, balanced amount of alcohol, wonderful, sensual, silky texture, that has a velvety feel in the mouth, that have all the things that I'm looking for in Pinot Noir and in Chardonnay or Pinot Blanc, Aligoté, everything else in that kind of a sense, that what you're doing is exactly what you're saying. If you're playing the Star Spangled Banner on a Fender guitar and you're Jimi Hendrix, you're dead. But if you're a 60-plus-year-old Japanese consul general of the New York first place that the Japanese came over in 160 years ago. And the guy who was a consul general said he wanted to give a salute to America last week. His name is Kanji Yamanouchi. And you can look it up, and everybody should look it up. Kanji's wearing a suit, looking like a typical stiff Japanese guy. And he says, to honor America that I love so much, I want to play a song for them. Takes off his coat and plays the Star Spangled Banner note for note, Jimi Hendrix style, as a 60-plus-year-old Japanese guy. And it made my fucking coronavirus month. And I told my son about it, who's a guitar player living in Japan right now, and he looked it up. He was totally blown away. And he wouldn't say, I am playing Jimi Hendrix Star Spangled Banner. He just said, I am playing the Star Spangled Banner. And when you heard him the first note, you knew what you were going to get. And when I say I'm making wine that's Burgundian, you know, in Santa Barbara County, we don't have a lot of correspondence to the weather feeling, the soil feeling, or anything you feel being in Burgundy. But if we have sense in managing our affairs and our business, we can make things that are as Burgundian as any good Burgundian winemaker can make them. Different flavors, Santa Maria, no question about it. But compared to bad winemakers that are violating all the rules in Burgundy, claiming to be Burgundians, and they are, using Burgundian grapes, and they do, and they make shit that is oxidized, undrinkable, horrifying, and you're kind of going, oh, I wouldn't have done that if I were you.
Would you still say that Burgundy makes the best and the worst Chardonnay in the world?
I would say both of those things, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Let me let's fire this up. In previous interviews, you discussed the evolution and improvement of Santa Maria Valley AVA vineyard since '77 when you first began working with them. You mentioned improved clonal material, genetic accessions, trellising, matching varietals to soil and climate, getting rid of the Bordeaux varietals and favoring Burgundian accessions, and specifically the Dijon clones. The question I have is complicated. If you can take me through a little bit of the history of Santa Maria vineyards from your perspective, and then consider, does terroir evolve and mutate by virtue of technology and agricultural development? And at what point does terroir become standard or find its equilibrium, or is it constantly changing? So a little bit about Santa Maria's history. And yes.
Very complicated question. And I'll only answer when you're talking about mutating terroir. I believe the hand of man is equally as important as any aspect of terroir. And so what we're doing, I believe, is perfecting the intervention of the hand of man coming into terroir and trying to get the best you can get from it. And you can't get it without learning. But the sad thing is people who are talking endlessly about the good old days, or, you know, make Biennacido good again, or all this kind of nonsense, are missing the point of what was going on when the vineyards were planted. They were planted with more Alsatian varieties than Bordeaux varieties, but they weren't planted in any kind of sense with any understanding of what was going on in Burgundy. And in fact, for 20 more than years, there was no feedback coming over, because during that period of time, the French were very Anglophobic. They didn't speak English, and if they did, they didn't want to share it with anyone. But I went over in 77 to visit. No one spoke English. When I went over in 81 to work, there were two people, Dominique Lafont and Jean-Michel Monet, who was also in Merceau. And nobody else could make a sentence to me to explain things. I talked to Tony Austin, the winemaker at Firestone at that time, a protege of Andre Chelichev's, and Tony had just gone over, and Tony came back, like Michael Benedict and Richard Sanford when they went over, and the things that were gaping holes in what they were supposed to be learning and doing, they didn't understand because they didn't speak the language. And in the case of the winemaking at Sanford and Benedict in the early days, it's quite complicated because they didn't figure out what they needed to learn when they were in Burgundy. And in the case of all the farming, Dale Hampton led farming, and Dale was great to perfectly farm American vineyards with tractor spacing in environments that were direct rooted planted. And he was better than anyone else that way. And then when I got a chance to say what I wanted to do in 1994 at Biennacido and plant a new vineyard that was the famous, legendary, sexily named Block 2, we put in Dijon clones. We put in the Mount Eden clone from Sanford and Benedict that really was making some great wines, I thought. We put in various different things that we thought might work. We planted with a density that was 4 times more close, trying to drive the vines down, like you were talking about when we were warming up earlier on, about getting the roots established and not just taking the material from the soil. And as we did that, we just had to take a flyer that the possibility of those vines growing would be interesting. And everything I planted at Mendocino, and they were nice enough to give me the opportunity to plant things that got to be state-grown cultural clubs that I did with them. Jeff Wilkes, your man, was heavily involved in that whole idea. And in 94, 96, and 98, I planted vineyards that I've now watched mature for 20 to 25 years, and I'm thrilled by the results. And that is the hand of man as much as terroir that was there. But that terroir, you know, when you looked at Mendocino during that period of time, if you look at the vineyards, you saw a lot of flat ground planted. You saw a little bit of baby hillside stuff planted. And now when you look, and I have critics talk to me all the time saying Mendocino is just cramming it in wherever they can, and their vineyard is too big. It makes no sense whatsoever. The details are planted. And I'm going, have you ever freaking been to Burgundy? When you get to the Mi-Côte, like our block 2 is, see the middle of the hillside, that's where the Grand Crus are.
That's it.
You only plant the bottomland, you're planting Bourgogne, nothing more. So we allowed observation to tell us possibility, the possibility, whether it's change in terroir, amendments to the terroir, whether it's poising the terroir to show what it's possible to do. I can tell you that the 2nd generation and then 3rd generation and 4th generation of plantings at Mendocino are a heck of a lot better than the 1st generation.
Even though the 1st generation is 1973 unrooted, you're finding
72, 73 unrooted, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. Is there anything that you remember from the development of Santa Maria Valley in the early days that would really surprise people? Like something that you weren't ready for, or something that doesn't get talked about very often?
Yeah, and I'll bring up Tony Austin again, because Tony was a special cat, is a special cat. He's up at Sonoma now, and he has a very fertile brain and thought about a lot of stuff when he was working down at Firestone and then looking to move up to the Santa Maria Valley. And Tony made a wine in 1980, the year before I left Zaca Mesa and went out and worked around the world and came back and started something. And the wine didn't go through malolactic. The wine was fermented in newish oak. And the wine was extraordinary. A white wine that was so much better than anything we made at Zaca Mesa. And we worked hard. We had Adam Tolmack there. We had Bob Lindquist. We had Ken Brown. We had a team that drank more good wine and worked hard to emulate it than any team I could imagine existing in California during that period of time. And the grapes we had were good, but they weren't good enough to make that kind of wine. And so in Santa Maria, I had always looked at what had been made up there, because it was Rancho Sisquoc in the early days. It was cooperatives over in Santa Maria that were made because the growers couldn't sell their grapes. And the products that were made were mediocre at best. They were really disappointing. They were all tank fermented. They were all aged for a short period of time in barrel. They had very little new oak. They had no style. And that's the problem. Style is something that should only be worth 5 to 10% of the quality of a wine. But when you have no style, that's worth 100% of the quality of the wine. And there it kind of sits. And so we had these changes that happened. You know, Adam and I started here at Mendocino in 89. And the 89s that we made weren't clearly better than Los Alamos Vineyard, but Los Alamos Vineyard was a vineyard that was farmed through neglect. They did nothing to it. And the grapes, because they're grapes, the vines survived and the vines thrived. And the wines that we made during that period of time, like the wine from our first wines from Sanford and Benedict, and like the wines from Babcock that we made, were just wines that were completely in a niche kind of sense, out of the realm of the quality that had been made in California. We had people telling us Acacia was just as good as we were during that period of time, except the people that actually understood what great wine tasted like. Yeah, they were clean, they were correct, they were nice. They had a bunch of the dynamic of Carneros, which was hot during the time, pushing them. And we had nothing in Santa Maria. We didn't have any idea, even though Santa Maria was one of the first, if not the first AVA, certainly the first AVA here in the Central Coast, but one of the first AVAs anywhere in California.
Number 3 and number 2 in California, behind Cornell Valley and Napa.
Yeah, and still getting no credit whatsoever. And it was amazing for me. And then amazing to me when I tasted Tony Austin's first wine that he made. He was going to go in a partnership with Dale Hampton and John, whatever John's last name was, a really important. He mostly developed heavy equipment and was helping to plant vineyards. And the three of them were starting something that later on became Ken Brown involved, and then became Byron, and on John's property. And during that period of time, the possibilities were there, but nobody was even investing a dollar to experience it. You know, we were all looking for lowest bottom dollar prices paid by the Christian brothers, and truck our grapes up to Napa and have them turned into Christian Brothers white, Christian Brothers yellow.
Well, at least, Brother Timothy knew the fruit was good. I guess he was telling a lot of people. He was one of our first cheerleaders, right?
Oh, he was one of the very first. He certainly was a big client for Los Alamos Vineyard, where Adam and I started in '82, and then also all the stuff up here. But this was really looked upon as a wasteland for grapes. It was looked upon as a great place. You should have planted vegetables or raised cattle. And the Santa Maria Valley, when you look at it, when you feel it, when you breathe it now, looks like it was destined for great grapes, doesn't it?
It's an amazing region, and I live in Orcutt, right across from Santa Maria Valley. I had a really good question, really quick, from Grape Nuts Wine. They were curious on what ABC wines they should open to enjoy. So why don't you tell us what you've chosen tonight, and maybe talk to us a little bit about this delicious Chardonnay?
Well, what I was trying to do is do only Biennacido stuff, because I was talking to you, and our winery is located on Biennacido, and we may be the largest customer of Biennacido currently, because we buy a lot of fruit. Believe in it totally. We've planted a lot of fruit on the vineyard. We've given them a lot of our viticultural prowess, and they've paid us back by giving us great farming and working very hard with us. But I also opened up the first Dijon clone from Burgundy in white wine that was planted in Santa Barbara County. I planted it in 1998. Chardonnay clone 76 from Dijon. I had a gentleman that I'd met in a line of tasters in Burgundy for the Hospice de Beaune, where all tasting had a little silver spit cups. Unimaginable, you could even know if a wine was good or a wine was bad. But the gentleman's name was Raymond Barnard, and he was a professor at Dijon that developed all the Dijon clones. And so in 2001, I made the first wine from 76. We had it 2 years in barrel, 100% new, and the wine's still a glory to drink. It was young vines, but really a remarkable product. And I totally believe in the Dijon clones for Chardonnay, even though I've only planted them once since. That was also at my vineyard, Le Bon Climat, across the river from Biennacido. And I'm not sure if anybody else has planted them. I'm not sure if anybody else believes in them. They ripen to a nice golden skin color very early. So the alcohol is 12.2 alcohol instead of 14, but fully ripened. The acidity softens. And, you can see with this wine, it's a showy wine from 15, a very showy vintage as far as I'm concerned. And if you need something to open and you're at home, if you have a Nuit Blanche from 16 or 15 or 14 or 13, open that. If you have a Dominique Lafont, Claude Labarre from any vintage that you like, open that. If you have a Cocherie wine, open that, and the whole time close your eyes, listen to my voice, and think that I made that wine.
Beautiful Chardonnay grapes that we can look
gorgeous.
At as we talk
gorgeous.
About
healthy.
Wine. Yes, those are Wente clone from Clos Pepe back in 2012. But
nice.
Also a question about Chardonnay. So we're drinking right now. We are drinking the 15 Clendenen Family Vineyard Chardonnay, Santa Maria Valley, Le Bon Climat. And I have just opened the Pinot Noir we're going to be drinking, which is the Santa Maria Valley 2017 Biennacido Vineyard, which I'm looking forward to. Quick aside on Chardonnay, Joey Rohn asks, Jim, most consumers tend to think red wine is good for aging, but your 2001 Chardonnay that was just released in Magnums is outstanding. Why don't you think Chardonnays get the same love as far as laying them down?
That 2001 in Magnum is from Biennacido, 100%. K Block. I wish could have talked Bobby and Stevie in the early days into giving names of their various blocks, things like Seductive and Silky, things like Nether Thigh or something. I'd be so happy. But instead we get block 2, block 11, we get K block. Well, K block is all ours, north-south facing, the vines. If you ask Chris Hamill, he'll tell you they were once upon a time Gewürztraminer and got grafted very early. I know a lot about the vineyard, and I didn't think that was the case because we got to it very early. We got to it in the late 80s to vinify. But we have double density, intensified the planting volume, and the wines we've made there from the very beginning have been wines that are exceptional in the style of wine that we want to make. And I want to make it very clear to you all that the only thing when we're talking about this that I want to make clear is there are a million styles of wine you can make. There are a million ways you can make wine. You can try to act like what your wine in the glass is tasting like is not what you actually made, but what you intended to make. But in reality, out of all the wineries in California, I believe that the wines that my team, Jim Edelman, Enrique Rodriguez, Arturo Alvarez, the guys that are there working for me and doing all the hard labor now, we make the style of wine that we want to make. A style with Burgundian structure, not Burgundian grapes, not Burgundian flavors, but structure, texture, integration, harmony. We make that style better than anyone that I know in California makes the style of wine that they want to make. And
So,
there we are.
do you like the word deliberate? Do you think that's what you're doing is you're making deliberate wines and you're not just riding the wave that now
The other thing you might want to say, well, that's a good way to one way to capsulize it. But I think what we're doing actually is informed. I think I've paid my dues, 40 years of winemaking, into Burgundy 43, 44 times, talked to every Burgundian winemaker of any merit whatsoever, the garbage, the great, the fucking godlike like Henri Jaillet and when you think about Koch and Lafont and Jobard, we had a Jobard for lunch today from 1997 that Bob brought from Francois' son, Antoine, incredible wine. And we continue to stay current, continue to work on it. So yeah, we're deliberate. We understand what we want to do. We created the style. I didn't make my first wine in 1982 without having my style directed. I worked 3 years at Zaca Mesa. I worked 2 years, 2 vintages in Australia, 1 in Burgundy, and I came up and knew exactly what I wanted to make. And I talked to winemakers who, discovered that in vintage 26. And you're just kind of going, wow, so you were just selling experiments before that, and now you're selling the style that you want to make. Ouch.
On that subject, in Burgundy and California, what is inimitable about Burgundy that just can't translate to the terroir of California?
It's a tough call because I know in the final round, you're going to ask me questions that I'm going to fire out answers to, and one of them was favorite wines kind of thing. And I just want to use him as an example because he's now become a very good friend of mine. He was the most inaccessible guy in Burgundy. All he wanted to do is work. Now he's retired because in Burgundy at 65, if you don't retire, they will not pay you your Social Security. If I had to live on my Social Security, I'd be working until I died because there wouldn't be any option there. But Jean-Francois Costerie makes the most stinky, oil-driven Burgundian spice, exotic style, exotic style of wine that anybody can make on earth. And how did he fall into that? He fell into that. If you talk to him about it, he says, my wines are not reductive. And then I look at him and go, well, when you look up copy machine in the dictionary, they have a picture of Xerox. When you look up reductive winemaking in Burgundy, it's your label, dude. If you don't think it, you're wrong. And you can't stumble into something like that. But what you can do, if you have it, is try to replicate it, try to keep on staying in that style. And Koch has certainly done that. And the greatest white wine I've had in my life, which I will reveal later, is a Koch white wine. And that's what you can't duplicate. If I could tell you, Wes, how many times I was disgusted by the results of people that were domestic winemakers that wanted to have autolyzed yeast in their sparkling wines and be just like champagne. So they made reductive, which one of the 7 stomachs of the cow did this fart-faced glass of wine come from, kind of a thing. And you're kind of going, that's not autolyzed yeast. That's just reductivity. And they couldn't get it. And so you can't duplicate things or copy things that you don't fully understand. But when you find it and you find things that sort of lean in that direction, and you're blessed, and things are a whole lot better than they used to be. It's just what you can't do in Burgundy, and we can do everything else. I've done it. We have lifted their barrels. We have heisted their clones. We've consulted with the world's best genetic scientists that worked at University of Dijon, because my friend Jean-Francois Frere in Burgundy is the one that introduced me to them. And they're incredible guys. They know so much. They're beyond imagination special. And we've done everything you can possibly do. We can't steal their soil. We can't steal their exposures. We can look at exposures and try to work with that. And, we made some smart choices in some of the things we can do. But, my first in 1982, Adam and I sent out a greeting card to announce our arrival. And it was a picture of Adam and I in tuxedos. Can you imagine? Adam Tomac and Jim Clendenen in tuxedos in their cellar. And it said, Burgundy is where our hearts are. And we asked them inside, it was an entreaty. Please buy our new nascent wines created by Au Bon Climat so that we can buy Burgundy. And people actually they appreciated our honesty.
The one thing I didn't actually sit was the preface for that question. You drink a lot of Burgundy wines. I've seen your recycled bin. It usually contains the consumed value of a new Porsche. I think you have the greatest recycling bin I've ever seen, and I just wanted to say that. Now, I've heard you say that Bordeaux taught you exclusivity, that you needed a title and a castle to succeed as a vigneron. Burgundy taught you an egalitarian lesson. A few rows and a few dozen barrels can make a meaningful wine brand. Australia taught you your technical production techniques. If you were bloody rich and had a title of a few banks under your belt, how would you have fared in Bordeaux? Let's take Jim Clendenen. Let's place him in 1970, whatever. You just step in and buy a super second. Let's just say Chateau Angelou. What are you doing in Pomerol? Or is that Emilion?
I would have made that's Saint Emilion, but I would have made a way better Angelou than they were making in the late 70s and early 80s. No question about that. They are one of the ones that went on a huge campaign to be better and better and better. They got a little big, they got a little plush. I wouldn't have gone that far. And one of the problems would have been I would have gotten to a point where I was satisfied with the classicism of the wines, and then I would have been marginalized by the mainstream wine critical firmament, and they would have ended up telling me that my wine wasn't forward-thinking enough, But I'll give you an example of what I would have done, only because I'm now making Petit Verdot under my Clendenen family label, and I keep it 3 years in new barrels, the same kind of barrels that Petrus buys a lot of, and really, really good barrels. Terransode. Terransode, if you're a home winemaker and you want to start making a Cabernet kind of wine, I have to tell you, the first home wine I ever tasted that I liked was made by Ken Brown in Los Olivos in his garage. And I can tell you why it was so good. 100% new Demptos barrels. And who does that as a home winemaker? That's $1,000 investment right there. But the guy was an 80-year-old man in Saint-Emilion, and his company is called Chateau Soutard. And Becky Wasserman was his courtier, selling the wine in the States, and the only person in Bordeaux that made wine that she sold. And Becky was so important to my life. She's the person that got me my job at Claude Labousse store in Burgundy in 81, got me my job at the Domaine Duc de Magenta after that, when I violated my visa on the first job that I had. And I stayed with her, I cooked with her. She opened so many phenomenal bottles of wine for me to share with her. She's far and away one of the most important people in my life. And she told me about this guy in Saint-Emilion. He sold his wine for $10. I still have Soutard from the early 80s that is so wonderful. 3 years in barrel. Immaculate farming for what he had. Not even a Premier Cru Saint-Emilion vineyard. And Premier Cru in Saint-Emilion is a dime a dozen. You have like 2 Grand Crus and 4 million Premier Crus. The wine was fantastic. And that's where I would have gotten stuck in Bordeaux, and I would have been marginalized. I mean, I was never going to have a chateau. It's hard to clean those damn places. They're drafty. I'm not comfortable. I think for me, as I was growing up, probably the sex would have been better. But in those castles, they're drafty and dank. And if I went there, I would have been satisfied. And there are people like that. There are wineries that sell wine for extremely high prices that are really tiny, and they've changed a lot. The garagistes came in and changed things. The Le Pins of the world. There are people that aren't the way that I always talk about it. But I have to tell you, when I left turning 21 in Bordeaux, I went to 2 wineries just to look at them. I never tasted wine there. And it was so unimaginably unobtainable for someone of my wealth. And, both my grandfathers were coal miners, and they were immigrants. And one of them fought in World War I, and, marching out of Paris after the Normandy landing, or not the previous landing, not the Normandy, sorry, I'm an idiot. They were walking through Reims, where Champagne's heart is. And I always tell people when I'm in a funny mood, I always say that was as close as the Clendenen family ever got to buying land in Champagne.
Yeah, no, in the cathedral at Reims, the year 800, at the coronation of Charlemagne, Charles V, Charles the Great, was the first time champagne was ever drank as a celebratory sparkling beverage. Year 800.
That's a very true and meaningful, and my association with Charlemagne, right? He's the guy that informed the making of my Hildegard. His wife was Hildegard. And so Pinot Barreau, Pinot Blanc, and Aligoté blended together in New Oak gives you Charlemagne's wife, Hildegard, because she's the one that planted white grapes in the hill of Corton. I drop his name all the time. And you know what I do to add to what you said? You were perfect, except you can also just say Carl Magnus.
Carl Magnus. And and I understand that actually Pinot Blanc was part of Domaine de la Romanée-Conti until 1956.
Yes,
for a little extra color and aromatics. Let's go on. Talk to me. First of all, we're exactly halfway through, so it's time. I think we've had our proper, I always say, proper wine foreplay is bubbles, white, rosé, then red. We didn't do bubbles, we didn't do rosé, but let's jump right into some Pinot Noir. What are we drinking?
We're going to 2017, only because our 2016 Historic Vineyard Collection Bien Nacido Pinot Noir. And what this is part of our 1994 planting of Block 2, sexily named Block 2. And it's always something that is minimum 50% whole cluster and could be as much as 100% whole cluster, depending on the way the clusters show. I don't like to do things dogmatically now, because when I started making wine back in 1982, the first 3-4 vintages were 100% whole cluster, and the grapes were not of good enough quality to be able to make wine like that. So we had a lot of problems. We would have had problems anyway. The vines just weren't super special, but making with 100% whole cluster was a very complicated style decision that was not justifiable by the product we made. We cut it down to 50% starting in 84 and until 95, which was the most uneven ripened, tiny yielding, horrifying vintage we'll ever have in Santa Barbara County. It averaged less than a half ton per acre, and the grapes were green, pink, and raisins in the same cluster. And so if you fermented with whole clusters at all during that period of time, you made a horrifyingly vegetal, physiologically immature, unattractive wine. And I did not do that. People think I'm dogmatic. People think I won't change. People think I won't react to what I see in front of me. But actually, I'm pretty much more reactive than silver and air. But we stopped using stems altogether. And then by 2001, doing our own farming, doing a lot of organic work in the vineyard, having new vineyards we were working with, we began to play with stems again. And now we use stems for a lot of things, but this is one wine we always use stems. The reaction to our 19, I'm a century behind, dude. I'm a decade behind and a century behind. The 2016 Bien Nacido Historic Vineyard Collection wine was the first wine that we ever got 96 points from Galoni or anybody else. We've been on kind of a roll for a long period of time. I was plateaued out at 93 points, but I would never had a bottom. So I got 57 points one time from the Wine Spectator for a really great Bien Nacido Chardonnay, but it was very reductive. It was a wine that Coach loved. All my Burgundian friends and clients loved. Parker even gave it 90, 91 points, but Jim Laube thought it was a horrifying wine. And you know how I know that? He said it was completely fucked up, and he tasted it twice. I always like that kind of shit. Tasted twice. 57.
Remember when Laube used to taste a wine that was going to get more than 93 points? He would call you and order 2 cases before. Did you ever have that experience? Because
I didn't have that experience, Wes. And I'm glad you were lucky enough to have that experience. But I can tell you that the MWs from the UK used to come down to Bordeaux, and they would show their the scores they were going to be giving for Haut-Brion or for these great wines, and they would open their trunk, and they would have wines stacked in there very carefully, and they'd say, my trunk is out of balance. It needs to be balanced. And they would wait in one box of the super expensive first growth that was going to get a big score would go in, and they'd go, no, not enough. The second box would come in, they'd close it, and they'd drive away. And I heard those stories, and I'm just kind of going, give me a break. But I never had to.
It's weird, it's grafty, and it's horrible. One thing that I brought up, and I just had a quick answer is all I need, is Brettanomyces and stem inclusion comparable in the sense that if it goes beyond the edge of perception, you've gone too far.
Not the edge of perception, because when wines are young, everything can be out of perception. People like to criticize wines having too much new oak when they're 3 years old. And I remember when somebody was tasting with me, tasting Mouton, and saying it's an over oak Cabernet. And I looked at him and I said, well, have you ever had a mature Mouton? You might notice the oak gets absorbed at all changes. And they looked at me like I was an alien. And of course, later on, they come and tell me, yeah, you're exactly right. 25 years later, we couldn't find the oak. And so if it's at perceptive levels, is it a problem? Up to your palate. But if you're in a case of an active Brett infection and you can detect it and it's still going, if it's fizzy and active and bready, then in 5 years, it could be horrifying. But I've had the experience that in 25 years, you don't even notice it. My 2 worst Isabels ever made were Brett Isabels, and we had 2 barrels out of 40 that were put in that were Brett, and we didn't discover it or see it right away. And now when you taste the wines, you can't find any of that in there at all. I think that with anything that you have, volatile acidity tends to get worse with time. But I've seen wines that were so volatile, especially from the Rhone Valley, that were so volatile, you'd never think that they would come around. And after 20 or 25 years, it's probably extraordinary. It's amazing how wine changes. And amazing if you have a totally clean wine that you buy and pay a lot of money for it, but it happens to have some kind of a precursor in there, a little bit of RS, a little bit of something in there that can go bready on you in the bottle, then you're screwed. Those wines will never come back in there. Kind of a mess. Big sparkling Cabernet with Brett.
Is there ever a time where you can have a wine that is so stem included that you taste it when it's young and you're like, oh, this is undrinkable, and then you go back to it? Or to me, stem inclusion integrates. Brett tends to bloom. So I don't mind a little stem inclusion in a young wine, because I'm imagining, even though I know Emile Peynaud would probably be turning over in his grave, that these wines can actually, I found it in Brewer Clifton wines, that the wines are a little too stemmy for me when they're young, but 5 years of integration, suddenly those, that broccoli stem and soy sauce just becomes umami, and it becomes beautiful.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, one of the great examples was the 96, one of the first of the Brewer Clifton wines. And I had a bookstore owner, Mari, down in Santa Barbara, and she brought a bottle. She goes, this is so great, I want to share it with you. And I'm going, oh, this is going to be fun. The wine was phenomenal, and it had changed completely. And I'll give you a more recent example that was quite a cautionary tale for me, because after the vintage that we were talking about of 95, no crop, uneven ripeness, completely messed up, 11 was just a nightmare of a vintage for winemakers in Santa Barbara County. Huge amounts of frost, tiny, tiny, tiny crops, really difficult to figure out what style you wanted to make, how much you could extract, because everything was green, going greener and greener. And so I pretty much took out all the stems with the exception of Knox. And I have to tell you that the family of wines we made in 11, I lost my shirt. We had no crop. Every time I sold a bottle of wine, I was losing $20 a bottle. It was completely insane.
If you didn't sell it, you lost 50.
Exactly. It would have been worse. And so I had one of my favorite winemaking team friends since Brewer Clifton, Rajat Par and Sashi Mormon, in 11 used 100% whole clusters in their wines. And when I tasted the wines, when they first got in the bottle and they brought me over my wines to taste, I tasted them and I went, guys, I'm not sure you made the right choice here. This is really a complicated vegetal mess for me. And in 6 or 7 years later, Raj poured me the Bloomfield blind at his house, and I drank it blind, and I said, this is great. What is this? And it's amazing that a horrifying vintage, difficult decision-making process and keeping 100% whole clusters in it, in 5 years it can turn around. That's what's stupefying. 5 years.
Where did the pyrazines go? I mean, pyrazines don't degrade in a while. Anyways, it's crazy.
You know where it goes, Wes, and I'm gonna tell you this very quickly. What you're saying is 100% right. What happens is the wine grows. And one of the questions for those wines might have been how early they bottled. Because if I was going to use whole clusters, which I do now in some weird ass shit, I do it in Grenache, because when I die, I want someone to say he never made Rayas, but he at least tried. And I do it with other things that I leave so many stems in, but I keep them for a long time in barrel. And I think that's one of the things is those pyrazines then polymerize.
Yeah.
And they actually become founded, grounded, and they're not leading the way in the aromas or leading the way in the flavors of the wine. And wine does that a lot. It does it to wood. Wood becomes integrated and grounded in that kind of way. And patience and time, which as a young winemaker, I bottled my first wine in '82 in January after the harvest because I had no money and I couldn't buy any bottles to bottle the Chardonnay. Then I bottled the Chardonnay in April. Now I bottled my Chardonnays a year April later, and I can guarantee you they're better wines.
Now, can you pretty much say this about wood, stem inclusion, Brett? You can't over blank a wine, but you can under blank. No, you can under wine
material. Yeah, no, you're on Mel Knox territory now.
Right.
This wine isn't over oak. Those great barrels were under wine.
One of my favorite quotes ever in the history of the wine industry was Mel Knox when Chris and Bruno got married. He asked Chris publicly on the Robert Parker board, "Why would you buy the bull when you can get the shit for free?" I thought it was a great comment. I'm always.
That's Mel.
Now we got a lot of home. We definitely have a whole lot of home winemakers here. If you were going to look for one piece of advice in the vineyard and one piece of advice in the cellar to encourage someone who's just getting into the industry, and you're going to use all of your accumulated knowledge to say, do this in the vineyard, do this in the winery, do you have any suggestions for our burgeoning viticulturists and winemakers?
You know what I would say, number one, is pay attention to detail. It's all in the details. When you do something that you think is better than your best friend who's a home winemaker too, and then you show it to somebody afterwards, like you're professional, you're gonna get egg on your face, and you're gonna have problems. If you focus on what makes healthy grapes, pick in a style that you want to make from an understanding of that style that you've developed elsewhere, I think you'll do really well. As soon as the ego gets into it, it becomes a little bit crazy. And I say the same thing to professional winemakers. But the problem is, when you're showing things off and you're so proud and it's completely out of step with what you think it is or what the people who are about to taste it are going to find as perceptive ideas of what they're tasting, you have a problem. So I think that a clean vineyard is a very easy thing to work with. And one of the best ways you can do it if you're a home winemaker is to have someone like Chris Hamill at Biennacido, or have someone who's taking care of the vineyard for other people. Pay the amount of money you have to pay. You're only buying a ton. Maybe you're buying a ton and a half, and then you're going to get really healthy food, and that's a good thing. Then after that, do not walk away. There are so many people that don't top. They don't do the basic things. We top 6,000 barrels a harvest once a week at Au Bon Climat. Why?
Yeah.
When I worked in Burgundy in 81, we topped once a week. When I made 36 barrels in 82 at my winery, we topped once a week. So how do I change it and have the same quality? And, I go up to my colleagues up in Napa and Carneros, and they're going bung over. And then they roll the bung up, pull the thing out, give me a taste, and I go, it's totally reductive. When's the last time you looked at this wine? Oh, we haven't looked at this wine in 3-4 months. You walk away from it, you're screwed. No surface growths. Take care of it, and then what you get is what you get, and that'll be a revelation of how good the grapes were. Anything else that you're doing? Nah.
So I'm hearing be humble and incredibly hardworking in the vineyard. Keep a clean vineyard. Buy the best fruit you can if you don't have your own vineyard. And then when you are in the winery, don't neglect the wines. Always keep your barrels topped and stay in touch with the wine so you always know organoplectically where they are.
Once a week, so you know where it is and there. And then if you're really nervous, I'm going to tell them to call Paul Lotto, because it'll drive Paul totally crazy, who is the most focused winemaker that I know and makes what he wants to make more than anyone. Because if you call me, you're going to go straight to the outside ringer. Oh, it's the home winemaking question that Wes put out for everybody. Now you're calling me. Wait a minute, you're breaking up.
Click. So here's another little a good winemaking question. Does aromatic intensity and a sense of place become homogenized at certain levels of ripeness and bricks? What's lost and what's gained in Pinot Noir, specifically in Santa Maria Valley, between 21 bricks and 30 bricks? Take us through what happens in your estimation in the vineyard. Sweet spot, what's gained, what's lost as we go through what most winemakers, 21 bricks being a little closer to where you're picking, 30 bricks maybe a little bit closer to where Paul Lotto is picking.
Well, Paul's not quite that bad.
No.
Unless
we have
can't link Paul there, but
no,
he's definitely picking closer to 25. There's no question. I believe that at 21, if you're picking, the only reason you should be picking is because you look down the road and the only person you know in the neighborhood who's connected to God is building an ark. Then you better fucking start picking, because the rain's going to be coming and it's not going to stop. And we don't pick at 21. And I wouldn't pick at 21, but if we have no choice, I know you can make good wine at 21. Back in 1987, I made a Sanford Benedict Chardonnay that was picked at 21, and it was a rock and roll and hooligan of a wine. Tons of fun. The 22 is starting to be, I would consider it 22.5, 22.8, pH that's around 3.3, really good, strong, stable acidity. I'd certainly consider it. And then if we get to 23.4, we're picking. And we won't pick it all. We can avoid it. We can let some get up to 23.8, and that's fine. A wine doesn't need any more alcohol than that. And I think back in the days in particular, which we're not doing so much anymore, but we were removing half the leaves on the plant. We wanted so much sunlight to penetrate. We wanted so much skin hardening to happen early on that it was a really big deal. And now I've discovered that with all the virus in Santa Barbara County and all the virus in California, for that matter, that the more leaves that you can have, the more chance you have of having the grapes ripen before the virus takes over and shuts everything down. So little complication that way, but that's kind of my sweet spot. I think that when you get much over 24, 24.5, you lose the spice and the aromatics that I want to see. You lose the things that even if somebody says, that's a pretty green Pinot Noir. Pinot Noir is green. Do I want it to be green? No. But if I start a little bit green, it's better than starting like really flabby and jammy. Then when you start getting into it, you get more color. There are some people that like color in Pinot Noir. I would call them the MLs, the Merlot lovers. But I think that when you start looking at things that are in balance, where you don't have to add acid, you don't have to do any kind of massive adulterations in the cellar. You're not making the wine in the cellar, and that usually happens around 23 or 23.8. Anybody who tells me in Santa Barbara County that they don't have to add acidity when they're picking at 26, even with all the shriveling and dehydration that happens at 26, the acidity's gone to hell. And then when you look at it, Christ, I walked through a vineyard, and I love to name names, but I'm not going to name names because the last time I named this guy's name, he threatened to sue me, so I'm not going to name his name anymore. But he was buying fruit from Biennacido. Chris said, why isn't the guy picking grapes? So he takes me into the vineyard. You see the little raisins that are there? Okay, the raisins.
I'll go back.
This right here, that is the kind of thing that when you pick it, you're going to make a green wine. And the raisins in the other one, when you look at it, it's just kind of like, that's all fine. When you start seeing things that are cropping up here that are white and green, and they look like they're mold and asparagus and mealybug, and you're not picking because you're waiting for more sugar, by the time you pick it, your flavors aren't clean and they aren't interesting. But I have to tell you that there's so many people that do that. You know, and it's for a long time I blamed it on a young winemaker thing, but I think it was more an idea of people who really needed to have affirmation for what they were doing from the American wine critics. And so they were waiting and they were saying the vineyard is finally getting good flavor now. And it was like 28. And I'm going, well, you were raised on Kool-Aid. You were not raised on wine. And
I like to say milkshake, Big Mac, French fry.
There you
That's
are.
the American palate. Big Mac milkshake, French fry. Seriously.
With ketchup in all three.
And lots of salt. Lots of salt. Here's a crazy question. What's the biggest wine you've ever fallen in love with? And was it because you were eating something that required it? Was there ever like a wine over 15% alcohol? You said, this wine tonight is perfect.
You know what? I have a lot of them, but I'll tell you only the one that I thought about. I want you all to know that Wes was nice enough to send me glimpses of the questions I was going to get, which I think is really nice of him because I'm not a good guy to surprise. You want to surprise me? You're going to not like what you get. And I want to say that when I read them, I said, well, here's two comments. These are so well thought out and they're so incredibly well written that if he asked me these questions in the way that he phrased them to me, we're not going to have a chance to answer anything. We're only going to be reading the questions.
I don't have a lot to do. I can't travel.
Yeah, I don't blame you. So anyway, what I think that I'm going to bring up is Bert Williams. Bert's just passed away. For years, Bert and I were rivals. You guys might think, how could a Bon Climat be a rival with William Sellium? They're great, and a Bon Climat sucks. You can think whatever you want. But Bert and I were rivals, and at the end of his life, the last 2 or 3 years, because of Blake Brown and some mutual friends, Chris Woodcraft, also dearly missed and dearly lamented. Try Drake's wines. Chris's son, Drake's he's a rock star in every sense, including being a rock star, playing guitar and being great. But he's a great winemaker, cares about it more than anybody that I know, maybe except for Wes. And I was at a dinner with William Sellium. And, you know, one of the things for me with my reputation, it's very difficult for me, is when somebody walks up and he goes, what do you think the alcohol is? And I'm going, oh, the old alcohol question. You know, I hate high alcohol wines, and you're asking that question. So I'm going to say, I think the alcohol is 40%, and it's a blended bourbon. And then they shut up and walk away. Because the alcohol, what they're going to say is it's 15 or 16. And Bert asked me what I thought the alcohol was on an Allen Vineyard William Sellium 1990 Chardonnay. And I said, Bert, knowing you, and I said, the wine's got extraordinary acidity, which it did. And it was natural, which it was. And it turned out the wine was 15.6 alcohol. And we were drinking it. Food we had it with is extraordinary. It was totally balanced. You know, he was used to people saying it must be 13.2. I wasn't going to go down that road, but I just said, this wine's perfectly balanced. I'm not going to say another word about it. 10 years later, in 2004, 2005, we were at the Carmel Masters of Food and Wine at the Highlands Inn Hotel. And Bert wasn't there, but Ed was there. And Ed brought out a bottle of wine for me to taste. So what do you think of it? And I laughed. And when he showed me what it was, I went to my car, because I used to bring my whole cellar in my car back in those days, because there was always a reason to drink everything.
And Monterey, you don't have to worry about it going wrong.
Nope. I went and got my 90, the first Biennacido Reserve. I made an 89 that was great, but the 90 that was the first classic wine that I made, and I pulled it out, and our wine was 12.8 alcohol. And if you drank them side by side, Bert's wine had gone like this. Tightened up, you found more intensity, more acidity, less of the showiness of the opulence that was picked at. And my wine had gone like this. And everybody who knew wine tasted the wines together, and they went, these wines are eerily parallel. And I smiled and I said, I never, ever would have expected that. But I'll tell you, that's why we're in the wine business. That's why the longer you got 40 years experience like me, I've forgotten more things that I remember that are important about wine.
Alcohol matters, but alcohol is just a number. Is that a fair statement?
It's not a fair statement because 90 or 95% of the time, it matters in a negative, inhibitory way. And you might find 5 or 10% of the time that it really doesn't, it's not important, because once you get to alcohol, once you get to all those problems are jamminess, flabbiness, flatness, raisiny kinds of character. And I don't want any of that in my Pinot Noir. I want earth, I want soil, I want spice.
Yeah. No, and certainly overt ripeness homogenizes the character of vineyard designation.
As does overt Brettanomyces. I remember when I got a phone call from friends of mine up in Napa, and they said, as our wines age, all of them begin to taste the same. And we had noticed this like 10 years before. We didn't age their wines because they all went ready in the bottle. And they go, our Zinfandel tastes like our Barbera tastes like our Syrah. And I'm just kind of going, you haven't figured this out yet?
Sort of like, yeah, absolutely. I've got 2 questions and another one if we have time, but this is a personal question. You can be anywhere doing anything after 2020 harvest, no COVID, no limits. Where are you? What are you doing, eating and drinking? I'm just assuming you're in Paris and Alain Ducasse is part of the, which
would be super. I love Alain, and I love Gerard Marjon, is a sommelier who back in the day, when I was still a young weenie, had 8 Au Bon Climat placements on the Paris Alain Ducasse. And at the
when I was in Paris in 1999, everywhere we went, people said, we would tell them we were winemakers from Santa Barbara. Oh, you must be with Monsieur Clendenen. He was here last night. Lucas Carton, you were there the night before. Alain Ducasse, you were there the night before. Oh, you must. Oh, would you like to see the non-French wine list? Oh, you have a non-French wine list? Oh, it's 80% Santa Barbara. Thank you, Jim Clendenen, for putting Santa Barbara on. I mean, to me, it's your relationship with those people, but they also understand that the quality of 3-star Michelin food matches perfectly with the elegance and restraint that is part and parcel of what we do here in Santa Maria Valley.
Absolutely, and it's impossible to duplicate that, but it was great when it was happening, and it was kind of organic, and it was kind of an arrival thing. I met people, shook their hand, they tasted the wine. It was a really great thing. But where I'm going to be, to answer your question, is I'll be in Burgundy, because immediately after the harvest, we have our Trois Glorieuses in Burgundy. So I'll be at a party at Jasper Morris's house if things are clean and we're allowed to go there. Because I can tell you, you can only separate in Jasper's house with the 50, 60 Burgundian winemakers who are there. You can only separate about 6 inches. And if it's their wives, you can only separate about 2 inches. And it's a great, great, great party. But I'm going to do what I did last year, which I haven't done in a very long period of time. I went with my first wife, Sarah Chamberlain, and my first partner, Adam Tolmack. And we went, after working in Burgundy, we went to Piedmont, and we ate white truffles for the first time. And it was just a life-changing experience. So last year, with Keith Browning, Keith Pitts, and Tom Black, 3 good friends of mine who paid a lot of money to charity to go with me. And we went to Burgundy, we went down to the Rhone Valley, and then we went across to the Piedmont. We visited with Altare, we visited with Sandrone, we visited with Gaia, we visited with a bunch of great people. And every lunch and dinner, we went to a restaurant and had white truffles. And if you buy white truffles to cook for your family, to shave without cooking for your family, the price you pay in America is totally criminal. But for $105, you can go to a perfectly credible 1-star restaurant in the hills of the Piedmont, and you can get a 6-course lunch, 6-course dinner, $105, and they put white truffles on each one of them in an ungodly generous kind of fashion.
I love the fact.
Unbelievable. And I don't want everybody to go there next year because I need to get a place in the restaurants. But.
And Emilio Altare actually sent us to a restaurant in Barolo where we had lunch, and the same thing happened. We showed up and there was like 8 guys in like trench coats out front that had found a half a kilo truffle the night before. and they like went in, and as they shaved the truffle, once they got to 6 or 7 shaves, the whole table started going, oh, like that dude does not deserve any more effing truffles. That's it. Come on. And they would weigh it each time. I mean, there's nothing like white truffles. There's nothing like that. Amazing thing.
Back in the day, the only place you could ever find any experience like that in America was to go to Babbo in New York with Mario Batali and have the big truffle in Mario's hand, the world's most generous, informed, influential person. And by the time he finished grading the truffles, like it was hard for me to want to kiss him, but I kissed him anyway.
Exactly. And I think there was some guy down at the Beverly Hills cheese shop that would sell white truffles out of the back of his trunk for about 10 years in LA. And that was the only place you could get white truffles. And
the two brothers? The two brothers?
Think so.
I bought mine at the Peninsula Hotel in the parking lot, and it looked like the cheesiest, most wretched dope deal gone wrong that anybody's ever seen.
Totally.
And it was white truffles, cash from my pocket out of the back of a SUV.
It was a wonderful. Quick question. Over the last 5 to 10 years at Camp Santa Barbara, where we bring in sommeliers from all over the country, we always have this sort of tradition where we drink Fernet the last night around a fire and talk about how this year will be the bellwether standout year for Santa Barbara County wine, our reputation and our fame. No one can speak more accurately or historically about the vision of where Santa Barbara County wines and Santa Maria Valley might be in the future. When will Santa Barbara get its proper respect, if we will ever?
I think it's beginning to, Wes, right now, and I haven't been optimistic about that because I've been saying after doing it with my own company for 38 years, I'm still waiting to be an overnight success. But the last couple of years have been special. I mean, you can read it. Antonio Goloni said in Venice 2 years ago, not just this year, but 2 years ago, he said that one of the greatest and most important places to grow Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and Syrah, Santa Barbara County. And that was the first time any critic, I mean, Parker went out in 89 and 90 and singled us out as somebody important, did it to Greg and Steve, a brewer in Clifton, in 99 and 2000. And it's happened, but, he takes things back too often, which is a little bit frustrating, or did. He never took it back a second time for me because he never promoted me again. But now I'm getting good scores from the Parker organization. We're getting good scores from the Wine Spectator, which is a big surprise. And other people are getting better. And when I see this, I totally believe in it. Because if you don't think that Santa Barbara County is doing as well as anyone in Pinot Noir, then read those new reviews from Jeb Dunnock, from Venice. And Jeb wasn't on the team at all when he first started reviewing my wines. We were just mediocre. And I'm going, maybe he's not swallowing. Maybe he's not tasting them. Maybe he doesn't understand them. And now he's getting a good idea of what's going on. And there are new people coming in. European, if you talk to folks from the UK, there wouldn't be anyone who wouldn't say the best place Chardonnay and Pinot Noir is Santa Barbara. They would all say that. And whether it's Jancis Robinson, whether it's Tim Atkin, all these guys have written great articles about all of us, and they completely believe in it. And so I'm very optimistic now, and I'm optimistic because we've produced the wines in the bottle. And now there's a reaction to that. They understand it. They've tasted them young. They've tasted them old. And the hegemony of the critics from Sonoma County who ran everything, whether it was Jim or whether it was Robert, that's what they love. I still have people that work in Russian River who think that it's a cooler area to grow Pinot Noir in Santa Barbara County. And I have a great property. Buy it if you see it. Barham Mendelsohn, great. Richard and Barbara Mendelsohn are my partners in this company, and we make a wonderful Pinot Noir that we don't adjust. We don't add acidity to it. We don't chaptalize. We don't do anything to it. And the wine's fairly priced. It's a wonderful wine, but every day, that vineyard, organically farmed, fantastic vineyard, only 5 acres, only Pinot Noir, is 13 degrees diurnal difference between Santa Barbara and Russian River every day. 13 degrees Fahrenheit. It's incredible, but it doesn't matter. It's still balanced. It's coastal. It's really good. But we are a cool climate, authentic perfect microclimate to grow Pinot Noir. Soil, we have to look for. Elevation, we have to look for. Plant density, plant material. There we are.
Yep. No, there's no doubt about it. What I'll do is our final, let's see, I want to make sure this goes back to this for some, oh, I see. Okay, there.
I like the Pinot Noir.
I do too. The Pinot Noir is showing delicious. I mean, the nice thing is it's juicy, but it also has a little bit of grip to it. I think the stem inclusion is spot on. It's right at sort of, you can taste it a little bit. I would guess it was 10%, 15% at most.
And it's almost 60%.
That shows you chose those stems incredibly well. What I'm going to do now is, even though we're just a little bit past 6, I'm going to rip through the speed round. These are 10 questions. If you get at least 6 right, you get a selection of delicious beers. And then there's one bonus question for a bottle of Premier Cru Burgundy. So here we go. All I need. And the greatest part about this is it's totally subjective because I tell you if your answer is right or wrong. Greatest grape we grow in Santa Maria Valley.
Pinot Blanc and Pinot Noir.
Pinot Blanc, never heard that. No, correct answer is Chardonnay. The motto for UCSB is Fiat Lux, or the Genesis 1:3 in the Latin Vulgate translation of the Torah. What's the meaning of your alma mater's motto?
Fiat Lux.
Yes.
By glory through big party.
That was a few years ago. It's actually and then there was light, and then there was light, basically. Pinot Noir stems, trash or treasure?
Treasure.
I'm going to give you credit for that because this wine is so goddamn good. What famed French enologist is famed for saying, using only the very best grapes is a new phenomenon, and I consider this the crowning achievement of my work?
Either Dom Perignon or Michel Rolland.
And that's actually Emile Pinot.
Oh, Emile Pinot. I even know him personally. He never said that in front of me.
We'll get back to Emile. Who did the most for California wine? Robert Parker, Robert Mondavi, Andrei Telechev, Clark Smith, or Augustin Harasti?
Oh, golly. Augustin Harasti brought the grapes. Robert Mondavi brought the fame. Yeah. So it's kind of a flip between those two, I think. If you're going to say Clark Smith, Clark is a nerd for me.
Commit. Where are you going to go?
I'll go with Harasti.
Okay, I'm going to give you credit for that because he believed in LA before he believed in Northern California, which as an LA guy, I got to give some credit for. Your time for one dinner in Paris: Alain Ducasse, Ty Vaughn, Lucas Carton, Guy Savoy, or am I missing one?
And Guy Savoy is a friend of mine, and I like the restaurant, but I'm going to have to say Alain Ducasse because he has 3 choices there,
I've ever had in my life.
And it's the best. It's the best of the best.
Yes, there's absolutely no doubt about that. Best Au Bon Climat wine ever to match tonight with a proper cassoulet.
Oh, man. Needs to be a Pinot Noir. It needs to be a manly Pinot Noir. So that would put me kind of in a great vintage from Bienaceto or Sanford Benedict, or it would put me into Tally because our Tally wines are so rich. So I'm going to go with the Bienaceto product, Knox Alexander, from a really sturdy year.
I think that's a perfect answer, and you are now only need 2 more to win your prize. Same question: best Au Bon Climat ever to match tonight with nettle spaghettini with butter and Alba truffles.
Oh, baby. Everything goes great with Alba truffles.
Well, hell yeah.
It doesn't matter what you're going to have, but I would go white wine with that. And I would go with a Bienaceto Le Bon Climat combination that has richness, concentration, acidity, and new wood, and it's spicy as all buggery because of that. That's called Nuit Blanche au Bout.
Yeah, I know the one well, and I'm going to give you credit for that. Hitching Post or Jocko's?
I understand Hitching Post. What else did you say?
Jocko's in Napomo.
What else did you say?
I just said Hitching Post or Jocko's.
Oh, you could stop with Hitching Post.
Okay, Hitching Post, as a Santa Maria guy, obviously that gets you credit. Barbecue.
And I want you to know that Frank Orsini is Knox Alexander's godfather.
That's
so,
that's
and
awesome.
you know, I also want you to know that I love barbecued sweetbreads more than anything on earth, and Jocko's is the only place that has them. And I try to talk Frank into making them, wouldn't make them. And I went back again to Jocko's. This is 20 years ago. I went back again, and the rancid smell of the cooking oil that they're making French fries in drove me out of the place. And it might be way better now. This is 20 years ago, Jocko's. I'm not shitting on you. Swear to God.
Jocko's Steak Restaurant in Napomo. Hitching Post, obviously famous from that movie that did for Santa Barbara County Pinot Noir what the Soviet Union did for socialism. Also, Hitching Post is where I met Chris Whitcraft. I told him in 1994 I wanted to be a Pinot Noir winemaker. He responded, you know, there are drugs you can take to prevent that. I said, I took them all in college. I still want to make wine. And then I walked over to Brian Babcock's table and he gave me a job. Barbecue, Argentine, Kansas City, or Austin, Texas?
Oh man, that's tough. I think Argentine barbecue is dry because they do that splitting open of the meat and they open it in front of the fire. And I've never had a great version of it. It kind of bothers me. And I love Austin, Texas, because when I'm there, I eat Japanese food at Uchi, at the best restaurant in America, except for the Hitching Post. And I'm going to say Kansas City, even though it's often too sweet for me. It's a little bit complicated, but I would certainly be down to Kansas City and Austin. But because I was married to Morgan Clendenen, I would also have to say that North Carolina.
You know, I'm going to say the Pit in Raleigh-Durham. The fantastic thing about Carolina barbecue is they understand. The first time I had California or a Carolina barbecue, it was like the first time I ever had Riesling. I'm like, holy shit, this is acid. Like, it was the first moment I recognized that acid was a structural component of everything. And all of a sudden I realized you put acid with a pig, you got a magic combination there. And I never had that experience. So I'm giving you absolute credit for that.
And smoke.
Absolutely. And next time you're in Portland, Oregon, try a little Argentine barbecue place called, what was it called? Oh, it'll come to me. So it's a one-word name, and it's like unbelievable Argentine barbecue. Best
I'll try to check it out because I got to tell you that I believe in the possibility of it. But those big giant fires with the split lamb and stuff there, things were so dry. And what you were talking about with North Carolina, the juiciness, the succulence, the acidity in the smoke, that's what I want in barbecue.
That's right. What's the best food city in the United States?
Oh, fuck. Okay, this is going to be a loser, but I don't mind losing. I wanted to say San Francisco. I wanted to say New York because anybody in their right mind would say New York. There's no question about it. But I'm going to say Birmingham, Alabama, because the entire city was completely created by Frank Stitt, one of the best chefs in America on a huge level. Highlands Bar and Grill. He's got Bottega. He's got Chez Fonfon, which is named after his time that he spent with Alice Waters at Chez Panisse. Fonfon is a character in the same books that are there. And Frank has been in there working as long as I've been working, even though he's younger than me, and his wife's more beautiful than I am. But the incredible thing about Frank and his restaurants is he's been so talented and trained so many people that now everything in Birmingham, from the cheesiest sandwich place to the best pasta place to the most incredible casual salads place, they're all run by Frank Stitt alums. They stay in town because when you love Birmingham, you love Birmingham. If you don't love it, get out. And it's a great place. You could spend a 4-day trip there and eat meals that would light you up.
I'm just going to say, because I trust your palate and I know where you eat, I'm giving you credit for that. And I'm going to Birmingham, Alabama. And I'm just going to basically go there and eat until they tell me that my hair's too long, then I'll just yell roll tide and run out and tip well.
And if you yell roll tide, you'll do just fine.
Okay, bonus. If you get this, this is a tough question. If you get it right, I got a bottle of Echezot for you. From 15, I think. What did Emile Peynaud say is the fundamental problem of evaluating wine?
You know, gosh, I can't remember enough quotes from Emile, except he was a consultant. My college girlfriend went to live down in the south of France, and she was actually an au pair. She was a babysitter for the people that made the Languedoc wine that Kermit Lynch brought in, that became the most famous Amada Gassac. And I was sitting at a table. This guy came up and he said, "I tasted one of your wines." I sent him a Zaca Mesa wine. He goes, "I tasted one of your wines. It was oxidized." And I looked at Perry Shafiq, who was my girlfriend at the time, and I said, "Who's he?" And she goes, "Oh, that's Emile Peynaud." And I went, "Oh, I think the wine's oxidized then." It must have been oxidized.
He said,
hardest thing to evaluate wines when they're young.
No, he said, what's the fundamental problem of evaluating wine? This was in making and tasting great wine. A $400 damn book, by the way.
Yeah, can't answer it.
I'll give you a lead in. Well, okay, I'll tell you the answer, because thank God I only have one bottle of Echezot, and now I have one bottle of Echezot. His answer was, if you put one wine in front of me, the fundamental question is whether I like it. You put two wines in front of me, the fundamental question becomes,
which you like better.
That's the fundamental problem of wine, that we do not allow each and every wine to express itself. And that's the moment when I read that, I said, well, holy shit. Then the secret is to give every wine an hour. At least. If you don't give a wine an hour, delicious things, and someone you love, things get terrible. I mean, things cannot be understood in the way that they could otherwise.
Well, Wes, I'm going to finish that by giving you the Jim Clendenen take on that. And it's only, I show up and I have 3 great red wines that I want people to appreciate equally for the strengths that they have. And it always turns into a beauty contest. It always turns into which one do I like better? So I say, well, I really like the Knox. The Isabel is actually smoother and creamier and better. And you know, the Biennacido is incredible. So, and it's just like, that's the nature of humanity. People can't taste with an open palate. And then afterwards, when they find out that the best of the wines, the most expensive of the wines, was not the one they thought it was, then what's the first word out of an American blind taster like that who's giving an evaluation? You know, the Isabel is opening up now. They have no belief in their own. They have no belief in their own palates. You know. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate all your time tonight. That was absolutely fantastic. I owe you a little care package by virtue of the fact that you did get 7 out of 10 questions correct from.
No, you decided to give me. You decided to give me 7 out of 10. Thank you very much.
No, actually, you got at least 6 out of 10 on your own. So I thoroughly appreciate that. You'll need to go back and study your Torah and your Latin Vulgate, but I didn't expect you to get that one. I love the fact that you said Pinot Blanc is the best grape we grow in Santa Barbara County, because that's the first time I've ever heard anyone say that. I should have given you credit for it. I stuck with my guns and said Chardonnay is the best we do, but I appreciate it because
Pinot Blanc is so good. I wasn't giving you credit for it. I love our Pinot Blanc. Edelman makes Pinot Blanc too. Biennacido grows it. I absolutely love it. And I will tell you that I censored myself because, you know, I don't have a modifier. I don't have a screening on myself. But when you asked me whatever that, what was it, caveat emptor? No, what did you ask? What did you tell me?
Fiat Lux. Fiat Lux. And then there was Lux.
Yeah. I was going to tell you right away because I went to UC Santa Barbara in 1971 and 1976. And I can tell you that back then, that would have loosely translated as better naked.
Well, I think I may have lost my virginity, believe it or not, in a Fiat, which shows you just how small I was as a teenager. But
I was going to say, mine was a Volkswagen van for sure.
Fiat Lux would be me opening the door of the Fiat after that and seeing the light coming into my Fiat and understanding I was no longer a virgin. I think I may have overshared, but that's why all these people come in and watch. So thanks everyone for hanging out. Really appreciate everyone's questions, everyone's time, and of course, Jim, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thoroughly enjoy it, and your wines have been delicious. There's not much left. Well, I've done a pretty good job on both bottles, but I've got a really good, I've front loaded my weekend and I'm ready to do it. This is one of my favorite moments of the week because I know after this show, I've got a beautiful weekend in front of me and no responsibilities. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for giving us a lot of information, and thank you for being a legend in Santa Barbara wine. We really appreciate standing on your shoulders as the next generation to stand up and to continue what you've been doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Wes.
Cheers, everybody. If you have any questions, leave them in the question thing. Other than that, thanks again, Jim. And we will see all of you next Monday for another episode of Day Drinking with Wes Hagen. Thanks again. We'll talk to you soon. Cheers.
Yeah, baby.
All right. Take care.